pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening. Board President to advise members of the audience that they may address the board regarding agenda items after the superintendent's report. Only those members whose names and addresses are listed on the sign-in sheet available prior to the start of the meeting will be recognized during new business. The chairperson will limit discussions of any item by the public to 3 minutes in order for the board to expeditiously conduct its business. Mr. Dolan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zachary. Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to see everybody here. It's a little bit hot. We're going to ask you to be patient because we have a couple of very important things to go over. All right, and the first order of business, a question arose about abatement of asbestos in the school district. So what we did was we asked the construction team to come. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Saverio Bellafiore and Mr. Robert Wildermuth from H2M, our architects, Mr. Brendan Broderick, Ed and Tara from our Air Quality Control Company, Environmental Control Company, and Mr. Jim Burke, our project manager, to please come to the microphone, and Mr. Bellafiore and Mr. Broderick are going to explain the process of asbestos removal in schools. There's no microphone? Yeah. It's it's best if you face the crowd. I just want to go with that.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Face the crowd?
Yeah, face the crowd.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan, for having us. As the district is well aware, over this past summer, the school district went through an extensive amount of construction within all district-wide. There was probably about $17 million worth of work that was done. It incorporated masonry repairs, flooring replacements, toilet upgrades, roofing replacements, exterior paving, of which a good portion of all of those projects contained some type of asbestos abatement or some kind of removal of asbestos-containing materials. That removal process is governed by two entities. Mr. Broderick will go through what those two entities are in detail and how the district complied with them, but the State Education Department is one of them, and the New York State Department of Labor is the other. So in all instances where abatement procedures were performed, the district was in full compliance with the policies and procedures that are set forth. So if Brendan would like, he'll go through a little bit more in detail as to what policies and how the process was implemented.
I got 6 foot, I don't want to be muffled, so I'm going to keep my distance here. But talking about asbestos can take a long time, so I don't want to go into every little detail, but I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards that you might have. But I'll just talk specific to this project. Like Saverio said, H2M, during the initial design phase of the project, went through, consulted the district's asbestos management plan, which they've been maintaining since 1986, and identified all building materials that would be impacted or disturbed by the proposed construction projects. So those materials were then identified. Part of the H2M's team consists of an asbestos designer who's certified both a licensed engineer as well as certified by the New York State Department of Labor, prepared abatement specifications, which clearly specifies all the different engineering controls that have to be implemented, the extensive engineering controls that have to be implemented during an asbestos abatement project. Decontamination chambers, negative air, HEPA filters, isolation barriers, critical barriers. He put that plan together. That plan then gets sent up to the New York State Education Department for their approval. Once they've approved it, then that became part of their big contract specifications, went out, was bid on, and then the contractor who won it, the GC, would subcontract a licensed abatement contractor. That has to be licensed by New York State Department of Labor, as well as the Department of Health. So they then they start the project. 10 days before the project started, they had to notify the United States Environmental Protection Agency that they're doing the work. They also had to notify the New York State Department of Labor they're doing the work, as well as put building notifications out. They did that work. While they're doing that work, the school district retained our services, so we're separate. We're not the abatement contractors, where we come to monitor their progress, but more importantly, while they do the work, collect air samples to make sure that they're being effective. So it was about approximately 7-day abatement of work. During that time, we collected over 275 air samples. That includes samples that were collected before the job starts, while they're building their containment and decontamination chambers, while they're removing the asbestos, and then more importantly, when they're completed with the asbestos, we do sampling. We use 2 different types of methodology. One's called phase contrast microscopy, and another one is called transmission electron microscopy, where we actually use the transmission electroscope. We collect those samples, send it to yet another independent laboratory that does the analysis. Once they've achieved clearance, and which means the air samples were satisfactory, we compared that to, again, the United States Environmental Protection Agency's regulations. We compared those results to the New York State Department of Labor regulations, and we also compared them to the State Education Department. Once they satisfied all that, then at that, and only then, does that containment come down. So that kind of a synopsis of what was going on with the abatement as far as how it was handled. I do commend it's the school district. They do have a very exhaustive asbestos management plan that includes everything from identifying where the asbestos is in the building, training their staff to know where it is so that they can take appropriate actions. In addition to that, every 6 months they retain our services to walk through the building, identify and make sure all that material is in good condition, and all of that is maintained in their asbestos management plan. So that's kind of a summary. Like I said, if I told you everything, we'd be here for 3 days. But I'll be available to answer any questions that the board or the audience may have.
And also just to keep, I just want to make one last comment, and also just keep in mind, those policies and procedures are in place for both when buildings are occupied and not occupied. Yep. Correct. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Wait, can we just, can we answer some of the questions that you're posing? What? We can't even answer. Can we answer? How about we answer some of the How about we answer some of the questions that you're asking? Yes. Yes, there was a. Wait, could. Yeah. Yes. Because asbestos is. No, asbestos is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's a ubiquitous material that is present in every facet of people's life. So to say, why are we talking about it? You will continue to talk about it forever. Well, we removed, the state education department requires. Yeah. Yeah, so, sir.
It's that I don't even know where to start. But I understand when you hear the word asbestos, it's very scary, especially what we hear on TV. Automatically you think, okay, here we are, a person wearing a 5-layer hazmat suit, cleaning up a contaminated the world that the mankind's killing the planet. The fact of the matter is that asbestos is not a man-made chemical. All right, asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral that's, well, first of all, there's 3, I'm trying to answer, but you're not letting me. I've got to be honest with you, I'm a little frazzled because I don't really know which direction to go in. So let me start with where I just ended with. The reality is that asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral just like gold, just like sand, a silicate that you see on the ground. It's naturally occurring. It was on this planet before mankind came. It's going to be here after us. All right, so it's not a chemical that's created. So now it was used, when they started using it, they used it in over 3,000 different building products. Not, asbestos products. Odds are your grandmother's oven mitt that you have in your kitchen has asbestos in it. So it's in, actually I usually ask a question, how many people live in a house that was built before 1990? Right, okay, who's going to answer? Right, so how many people, how many people since then have had a construction project, a new roof, a new windows, a new window, store? Okay. So then let's jump back through that. Asbestos is one of the most heavily regulated materials. When we do an asbestos abatement, we have to follow 3 regulations of 3 industries: the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the New York State Department of Labor, and the New York State Education Department. All of them have very strict regulations. So when there's an asbestos abatement, to answer one of the questions I think that was in there, was can we do the work when the building's occupied? Asbestos is like any other construction project. Desirably, we try not to do that, but when the instances pop up, you can. None of those regulations restricted. So the New York State Environmental Protection Agency, has no restrictions. You can do the abatements while the buildings are occupied. New York State Department of Labor, yes, you can do abatements when they're occupied. And the New York State Education Department is the only one that has a limited restrictions, which says you can do it so long as you build a containment, a non-combustible containment area, and that you're using separate entrances and separate ventilation systems, which the plan on this did occur. The children were actually in the new wing, which was separated by ventilation systems, construction walls, and fire doors. On the other side of the wing was where the abatements took place. Each abatement area was constructed using isolation barriers that are constructed of 2 layers of 6-0 polyethylene that are doubled up on all isolation or critical barriers. In addition to that, another 2 layers of polyethylene are covered on the walls, floors, and ceilings when required. Each of those work areas have constructed either an airlock or a decontamination chamber where workers would go inside and outside. Then inside the work areas themselves, they have engineering controls which include negative filtration units that are HEPA equipped. So in other words, we're creating a negative pressure. Have you ever seen an asbestos abatement? If you walk by when it was happening, you would see tubes coming out of those windows. Each one of the tubes are attached to a negative filtration unit that are HEPA equipped, which means they're capturing all particles 99.97% inside that are 0.3 microns in size or greater. So which means an asbestos is about 12 to 15 times that. So that's clean air being pumped out. It's coming out at a volume of 3,000 cubic feet per minute. So it's creating a negative pressure inside that classroom. So all air is going from the building itself into the classroom where the abatement is, and then outside, which is filtered. So at that point, there's no way that air is going to escape from the containment area back into the building. In addition, it is a perfect world. It's an engineered... All right, then let me finish this, sir. And then after that, and then during that abatement, while they're doing that work, we're collecting air samples within 3 feet of all those doors and windows or anything separating that building. Those samples are collected, sent to another laboratory for analysis, and every one of those samples have come back indicating or not indicating that there's been any release from it. So this is an asbestos abatement that, like you said, we've been doing this for 30 years. And this methodology is done, and it's not on you, and it happens not in East Islip. You are not indigenous to this. We did and how many abatement projects we did in schools through the summer? About at least 450 abatements that were all done successfully. And every single one of those, there is some staff, there's always some administrative staff, some custodial staff. Again, if in a perfect world, we would be able to separate it, but there is absolutely no way that your kids were at risk, and there's absolutely no way that they were exposed to asbestos at any level that would be concerned about it. I can't. No, I don't know. We weren't, as the monitoring firm, we're not privy to the school communications. But what we can say is that outside each entrance to the school building, a posting regarding the abatement was put out 10 days prior to the start of the project. That was put up by the contractor and confirmed by our staff. Anybody inside, now, first of all, no, not like the mask I have on right now. COVID-19, well, let's say a COVID-19 virus is about 0.1 micron in size, but they don't usually exist by themselves. So they would usually attach itself to a respirable particle. So to answer your question, it's probably, I mean, I would say probably somewhere around 5 to 10 microns in size. If you're at, I would be perfectly fine as long as they're doing the work in accordance with the regulations. It wouldn't. That is something that you should probably put into perspective too. The materials that, when you deal with asbestos, you got to be concerned about the release of the asbestos fibers into the air. There's two different categories. There's what we call friable versus non-friable. A friable material would be something like a ceiling tile or pipe insulation that when you disturb the matrix of the materials, the fibers actually become airborne. What we were removing predominantly was the non-friable materials, the 9x9 asbestos-containing floor tiles, which, by the way, still exist in just about every school building on Long Island. All right, so that material is what we call non-friable organically bound, so which means the fibers themselves are organically encapsulated with the rest of the matrix of the material. As a matter of fact, when we sample that, the only way we can sample that material is by taking that floor tile, putting it into the oven, and burning it for over 12 hours, essentially burning off all the organic material, freeing up the asbestos fibers so we can actually read it. From my understanding, there's only 2 states, the United States Environmental Protection Agency actually doesn't even recognize the removal of floor tiles as an asbestos abatement project. New York State does. And there's only 2 states that I'm aware of that actually do that. The other 48 states don't require a containment when you do it. So if there's any more solace to it, that the fact that the materials being removed, the floor tiles are non-friable, makes it even more difficult for release of asbestos fibers. It was done over the summer. Yeah. I wish that was the truth. Yeah, I agree. The rules and regulations, as far as Code Rule 56 goes, is that 10 days prior to the abatement, the contractor has to, again, they send a notification out to the New York State Department of Labor that they're doing it. They send a notification to the EPA, and they also post on the doors going into the building about the abatement, when it's taken place, what locations, everything it details about the projects. It's 10 statements. That is put on the door by the abatement contractor, and it's inspected. Doors are looked to see that they're present by our staff. So, as far as all I can answer is, as far as our jurisdiction goes, is to make sure that they're following the law. As far as communications with the district, that we're not privy to that.
Thank you.
Now, before I turn this over to Mr. Block, our attorney, I would ask, let's go to, maybe we should raise our hands and listen to each other, please, because, we have been in I said this last meeting, it's been a very, very difficult and trying 18 months, and we're trying to move forward, and we're doing the very best we can to reopen schools in as normal fashion as possible. And, the kind of, just yelling, screaming, talking out of turn, look, I'm sure it makes individuals feel good, but it impedes the process. And the most frustrating thing for me is listening to good people so dug in that they don't listen to their neighbors. Listening to good people who their opinion is right and the other person doesn't have a right to an opinion. Okay? And, if you have an opinion, express it. If you have a question, ask it. But all I ask is you tell the truth. You're going to get your chance. Now, no. What? You know what? Can we let him go? What was your first name again? Mark. Mark, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Mark. You got your
Okay, my daughter didn't like Eric. Nobody likes anything that happens, but okay.
I thought you want to film out.
She weighs 53 pounds, okay? She had to carry a school bag that weighed 26 pounds. I might be off a pound or two. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I weighed it in front of myself. On Facebook, they're like, I gotta bring my kid to the doctor, to the chiropractor. Wow, you got a growing child, that's the answer? They gotta bring all their books home every day. So my daughter's 52, she's gotta go up 2 flights of steps. Oh, give her the one with the wheels. She's still gotta lug it up the steps. So her back's bothering her, she can't get out of bed. Oh, okay. Should I bring her to that chiropractor? She's still growing. Is that normal? Is that normal? That's normal to you people? Take her to a chiropractor, that's the answer, right? Take her to a chiropractor. Why can't we leave their stuff in school? Why does she have to bring all her stuff? They say less than 10% of her body weight. Last I checked, it was almost 30% of her body weight, I think. And I'm not a mathematician. But her back's bothering from that. It's feeling better because the teacher tried to help, but she still got to carry 20 pounds, 1/3 of her weight. So she couldn't even make interactions. She's like, what's the point of wearing these masks when we can't even talk? They don't do nothing in gym class. She's like, no, we didn't do nothing. They're doing the same whatever it's called. It's a made-up game. I know you all have to get creative. But come on. Yo, you can pull the wool over my eyes only so many times. My eyes see clearly. They got shields over their desk. You're going to keep the shields there and leave the mask on too? Come on. If you guys can't see through it, this is what I'm doing. See you later.
All right, before I finish my report, we've invited our attorney, Neil Block, from the firm of Ingram and Smith, and he's going to speak about where we're at right now with the, government mandates and where we're headed. Hey, you want, this might be better because it's loud.
I'm gonna make shift seat here, so hopefully you can see me. I just updated the board on the status of the reopening plans and the mask mandate, which I know that a lot of people are interested in. And as I'm sure many of you saw, the new incoming governor, made statement that she was directing the public, the Office of Health, Department of Health, to issue a directive that there be universal mask wearing in the schools, inside the schools. And that directive, she announced, I think it was on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. So as of this point in time, that directive has not been issued. So we were hoping that we would have it issued by tonight so we could analyze it, assess it, and be able to provide you with more concrete information. But we don't have it yet. It may come tomorrow. Hopefully it will come very shortly because school's about to reopen. The method in which she is going about this, in which she is giving a directive to the Department of Health, is that the Department of Health has various powers that are vested in that department pursuant to various laws under the public health law, that it can make orders pertaining to what's in the best interest of the community to deal with public health issues. So that is what it looks like is going to happen, except we don't know exactly what they're going to state in their directive. And before we can make any decisions here, we need to know what specifically they are going to be stating. I've been getting questions from this board and many other school boards as to what if they issue a directive that says, yes, there has to be universal mask wearing, and the school district takes issue with that. What would be the potential penalties? And again, that may be specified in the document that's to be forthcoming. But under the public health law right now, there is a section on penalties for violations of public health orders and rules. And they range from fines of $1,000 to $2,000 a day to it being considered to also be a misdemeanor. And there's also reference in statutes to possible imprisonment. Again, whether or not that would be applicable to a potential directive or order or rule that's going to be issued, I can't speak to right now until we get that directive. But that is what's currently in the statute. Let me finish and then I'll take some questions. So that the board will need to be able to have that information to be able to make an appropriate assessment. There's also under the education law, when each board member takes an oath of office, they have to affirm that they will follow the laws of the state of New York as well as the federal government. So if there is a directive that's issued or an order or rule and that is not followed, that makes board members subject to being potentially removed from office. Again, whether or not that would be an action that would be taken, we can't really state at this point in time. So the bottom line is that we need to see this document, which has not been issued. And there may be some frustration with respect to that because I'm sure there's a number of questions as to what this school year is going to look like with respect to students in school and a potential mask mandate. But we're not going to have a number of those answers right now until we get that actual document issued by the Department of Health. So that's what the board wanted me to convey to you. So you're up to date. You have the same information regarding the status as the Board of Education does. They wanted me to speak to you specifically regarding that, so you hear it directly from me. Again, we're expecting that this will break. Historically, it's broken when we've gotten determinations from the state at 4 o'clock on a Friday, and then we're scrambling over the weekend to try to make sense of it. So I suspect that certainly by next week we'll have a document that we'll be able to look at, analyze, and then the board will be able to make an informed decision as to how to move forward with respect to this issue. Any questions?
Can I ask a few
Sure.
first? And
Yeah,
then,
Billy, sure.
all right, so either Mr. Dolan or Mr. Block, are there, or we don't know there now, because when I wrote these questions, I thought we were going to have some details, but can you talk a little bit about medical exemptions, at least in the past?
Yeah, we've always, these issues have come up regarding, is there any exception for students who have a existing medical condition which may be contradicted by wearing a mask? And we had this, same issue with this last year when students were required to wear a mask. We always have to look at those cases on an individualized basis and make an appropriate assessment, and we'll continue to follow the same protocol for this school year.
Are there parent waivers?
Yeah, like a parent waiver is, my interpretation of that would be where they can issue a release to the school district that my child can come in here and not, if anything happens to my child, then I will release the district from any potential liability. They can issue such a waiver, but that will not be held up if it was challenged in a court of law. If there was an outbreak or there's somebody claiming that they were infected at school, that waiver would not hold up. No.
Has the state in the past given any details concerning the duration of mask breaks?
They had the most recent guidance from the state that came out from the state education department did not address mask breaks at all. Whether that will be addressed in the Department of Health document that we're waiting for remains to be seen, but right now that is not specifically addressed from the state education department.
How does the district respond to students who refuse to wear the mask?
So, the district, and again, this is all a little hypothetical right now because we don't know what the Department of Health is going to come out and state, but if there is a universal mask mandate and the district has to adhere to that mask mandate, that would be part of a school rule. Just like other school rules, we have a code of conduct. Students have to follow directives. So, certainly we would try to, I would recommend that, through education, we reach out and talk about what our obligations are with respect to this directive that we're waiting for. But if the failure to comply with the directive, just like any other school rule you have, would potentially, be deemed to be insubordination, and you take appropriate conduct under the student code of conduct.
Are face shields, or were they in the past, a substitute for masks?
The most recent guidance from the CDC is that it recommends cloth masks. They don't address face shields specifically. They just have a recommendation that cloth masks are the more protective.
I know we don't know this, but I have another question about face-to-face, if they're 3 feet apart. I know last year was, how did we deal with kids who are facing one another in a 3-foot distance?
Right.
I don't
So
remember what we did.
Yeah, I can talk. Yeah, so it's, the most recent pronouncement from the state education department was that if students are fully masked and they're in 3 feet distance, they don't have to necessarily be opposite each other. They could be shoulder to shoulder within that 3 feet distance, provided they're wearing masks. And if one student ends up contracting COVID, the other student last year in that particular scenario would have to quarantine as being a close contact. Now the state is saying that as long as the students are wearing masks and they're at least 3 feet apart, the student who is in close contact with the other student who contracted COVID does not have to quarantine. They should still get tested for safety precautions, but does not have to quarantine. So therefore, what they were talking about last year in terms of face-to-face or opposite, that is no longer being set forth in their guidance.
I asked that question because for later on, I'm wondering about how we're going to deal with the cafeterias.
Mm-hmm. The cafeterias? Yeah, you could talk about that.
Currently with the cafeterias, because we understand how important they are to the kids, and their socialization. Mr. Manzo's working with the secondary administrative teams. Dr. Bells is working with the elementaries. We're going to look to maintain 3 feet. They're obviously going to have to take their masks down to eat. The elementary kids, you want them to eat and get outside as quickly as possible because they want to be outside. But they have several different options, whether it's a combination of tables and desks or tables and classrooms, eat in the classroom and then go outside and rotate. As Neil said, we are anxiously awaiting, the governor said we were going to get clear directives by the end of the week. It'll probably be 4 o'clock or late on Friday, and we'll be working all weekend. But we have multiple scenarios. But the goal is, remember last year they had shields and they were 6 feet apart in the cafeteria. This year we're cutting down to 3 feet, and there'll be combinations of desks and tables. But we do want the kids to be able to see each other. If they do have desks, those desks can be moved. By the end of the year, kids were doing that. They could see each other. I continue to commend, our students and staff who, look, this is a board that voted 5-0 to be mask optional. Our students are adjusting. One of the things you've mentioned a couple times is mask breaks, and our Jericho school system went back today. They were the first school on the island to go back, and they appeared on News 12 to have had a good opening, and the term they keep using is, generous mask breaks, and that's what we're looking to do. And, we stopped short of, defining mask breaks because of the activities in the class. An opening activity might have everybody close together, and we don't want to have to quarantine. And then they break away, and, that's the appropriate time for a mask break. So we are looking into being as generous as we can with mask breaks, and when they're outside, on a playground or in gym class, put the masks down just like they do with the sports.
Okay, well, I have other questions about the mask breaks, but it's not legal questions, so.
So we have,
I'm good.
See, Mr. Montori has a question. Nice to see you, Phil. Yeah, do you want to address that? I'll defer to Mr. Dolan for that answer.
And again, the music department, last year, they started out 12 feet apart, they moved them to 6 feet apart. We're curious to see what the final determination is going to be, but our music department was able to function. In fact, last year we had beautiful concerts outside. The weather cooperated. So music lessons will go on, music will continue. They have different rules, Phil. It was, last year it was, and I'm trying to, unless something's changed in the last couple of minutes, I believe it was 6 feet last year. They started at 12 feet apart, which was quite a challenge. We had them spread out in the auditoriums, and it was difficult. So they're allowed, they have, some instruments, they put, what are those contraptions on them? The music department was able to function, and we did have, at the secondary level had concerts, and the elementary level we had small, intimate concerts last year. So we anticipate the music department will be up and running. Excuse me? Cosmetology up and running. No, they'll wear masks. Well, hold a second, we haven't made the announcement yet, so.
Yes, sir. In the green short. Yeah, but the issue is that if they say they decide that want to be hypothetically mask optional, and then the directive, let's say hypothetically, comes out tomorrow with the exact opposite and a specific directive, then the board was going to have to potentially, pivot in that particular case. So I think, just in terms of being prudent, you always want to make a decision with the most information that you have, so you can make an informed decision at the outset, rather than have to potentially reverse a decision. The board may have very specific feelings towards a specific direction, And, there's also maybe an emotional, reason that you'd want to maybe do something. But I think the most prudent, like I said, course of action in this particular case would be, since we do still have a little bit of time before school starts, and we know that this directive is imminent, is to get that directive and then make that decision after we get that directive. You want to talk about that? Yeah, Mr. Dolan wants to talk about that.
I'm going to start out by saying, number one, I agree with you wholeheartedly, because what's had to happen is our administrative teams have had to work to come up with multiple scenarios, which is not fair. And I think the board, and I'm going to say this again, not only is it a 5-0 board, it's a 7-0 board, because the two board members, one who's present tonight, and it'd be nice, let's give Mr. Montori a nice round of applause. We never got to send him off. Hey, hey. Anybody that wants to stay after the meeting and tell stories about Phil, I'll be happy to listen. But, the administrative team has had to put in a tremendous amount of time to say, if this happens, we can do this. If this happens, we can do this. If they tell us this will happen, we'll do this. So, we're prepared to execute once they tell us what we have to do. The board has also, I think, shown a tremendous amount of courage and leadership, because again, we are 5-0, we were 7-0, with Mrs. Carney and Mr. Montori. What we're going to talk about in a little bit is, something that I believe hopefully we can all get behind and put the pressure on to get control back. Because right now, we are ready to open school. The problem is, it's almost like pushing a button now, and it could happen tomorrow, it could happen Monday, hopefully no later than Tuesday. In fact, I recorded an opening message this year because I didn't feel we should bring everybody together this year, because we want them in the buildings getting ready to go on a conference day. We don't have to bring everybody together and listen to a speech from me. And I started out with, this is being recorded on Thursday, August 26th. Your principals will be going over the final plan with you during your opening faculty meetings, because we know something's coming. We just don't know what it is. But I feel very confident, and I give, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Manzo, Dr. Bells, Anthony Gagliano's around, and the principals, directors, our assistant principals. I am confident that we're going to be ready, and we have plans in place. We will implement the plan and move forward.
Any more questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. There is a subjective component to that, it's fair to say. And will that be addressed in this document? Don't know. It may be. But I think that you also have to have some common sense. And, and we were talking about mask breaks. That's when students have difficulty tolerating the mask. And I think we're going to have to take it on an individualized approach in each particular setting. Right. Yeah, well, what you want to talk about? You go ahead. Mr. Dolan wants to speak again.
Well, no, it's not that, I really don't, but as I alluded to before, activities in class can dictate, mask breaks. But what I'd like to say is, and this is the best way to solve problems, if you have a child that comes home and is uncomfortable, conversation with the teacher or the building administrator, we worked through these things last year. And I applaud the parents, the students, the kids. We were able to work through this. And we're very cognizant of the fact that some kids are rule followers, and they may be afraid to ask for a mask break. Some kids like to wear the masks, and some kids don't. And so what we did see as the year went on last year, I mean, this is new to all of us. And our teachers, as the teachers got more comfortable and more adept, and as Mr. Carpluck brought up about the quarantining, we don't want to quarantine. So if you're in a situation where it could lead to a quarantine, we're seeing it with our sports teams right now, because our Section 11 has said you wear the mask until it's uncomfortable. Now, we don't have an uncomfortable officer out there. The coaches are not uncomfortable officers, and these are the older kids, so it is a little bit different, but the elementary kids are with the same teacher all day. And all I would say is, if there's an issue in a classroom, you reach out to the teacher, reach out to the building administrator, and we would like to personalize the instruction as best we can anyway. So we need to be, I keep saying, empathetic. We need to be flexible. We need to listen to each other and work together, because the hope is that this is all, this will all be in our rear view mirror, hopefully, this time next year. And we're all neighbors. You're friends. We don't want you divided.
No.
All right, Chris, you want to do the letter now? Should I do?
With this document that you made, will you be requesting or better yet demanding the science behind the mask? I still, in 18 months, last year, and if I'm wearing a mask, and this is not a mask. This is, like, if this was, I find it hard to believe that this pandemic is as bad as they say it is. Does it exist? Yes. Does it exist? Yes. I think, and in my speech, the CDC on their website is changing the PCR test on December 31st to a different test which differentiates COVID-19 from influenza. It's on their website. So what does that tell you? Common sense tells you that many of the people that have been tested positive for COVID really have the flu. But we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to call it all COVID and mask all the kids and vaccinate all the people and just take away their freedom and just keep going with this until everybody gets vaccinated. United States of America, okay? We are a free country. We are free people, okay? And we the people, okay, are smart enough. My daughter broke her arm 6 weeks ago, okay? And we knew what to do. We take it to get an X-ray. We go get it to an orthopedic. We listen to what they tell us to do. And when it's time, in 6 weeks, we go back. They take the cast off, whatever. We made that decision as parents, okay? I don't need somebody in Albany making a decision for me, or the CDC, or the FDA, okay? If there's no end in sight. The vaccine, we went from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to New York City, so many papers where you can't go into this restaurant. Are you kidding me? How do I lose my freedom in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I'm not the Commissioner of Health, so, yeah. I understand. I know there's a lot of frustration. I understand.
All right.
Yeah,
All
thank
right, does anybody have any questions for the attorney? It's okay, thank you. Do you have a question for the attorney?
Not too well. Can you come forward a
Come
little
on
bit?
Come on up. Sir, what's your question? Guys, please.
Yeah.
We can't hear him, please.
Yeah, I can't.
Guys, please, can we listen? Rude.
Thank you. Small concern as a taxpayer. So say CDC guidelines, recommend universal mask, K through 12.
Okay.
And we decide as a board not to follow that guidance. Let's say the guidance from the state doesn't come in. Are we opening ourselves up for lawsuits, like a negligence lawsuit or anything like that?
Right. So right now, where we have been is that it's been the district making a decision as to whether or not to go with a mask mandate or optional mask. That was, the CDC came out and said our recommendation is that you all adopt a policy that you have to wear a mask, but that's only a recommendation. And Suffolk County Department of Health came out with the same recommendation. So did the New York State Education Department. But if this directive gets issued by the Department of Health, that may have a binding effect on us where they're going to take that decision out of our hands and they're going to tell us this is what you have to do. And if we don't comply with that, which I was talking about earlier, there is a fine system that's already in place in the public health law, and there's also more severe penalties. Again, difficult to assess without getting the particular document because that document may specifically address that. But I suspect that if the governor is giving a directive to the Department of Health, which reports to the executive branch, for you to do this, they're probably going to seek to enforce that. And then that's where the potential liability would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One last question for the board. I've had 2 relatives die of COVID. I have 2 friends that were in comas from COVID. How many of my relatives have to die before people take it a little more seriously? Do you have maybe an answer for
All
that?
right, we're just taking questions
Yeah,
right now
I
from the
can't,
attorney.
I'm not
Okay.
qualified to answer that.
All right.
If
I
you
just
signed
wanna-
in to
I wanna
speak,
put that
you'll
out
be able
there.
to speak your 3 minutes.
Did-
This does
did-
not count towards that. So if you have a question for the attorney, please pose it.
All right.
Otherwise, we're going to move
How
on with
much
the
of a
meeting.
danger is like this conspiracy theory nonsense, like as far
Okay.
as, enforcing laws and things?
All right, that's
Yeah.
not
I'd
a
like to
question
know
for
that.
the attorney, so thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can I just piggyback on what was just brought up? Last year, there was an episode where some districts did not comply, and then they were forced the very next day to comply.
Yes.
Can you just, like, how did the state respond to their non-compliance?
Right, yeah, what happened, I don't know if you folks remember last year, there was, the Commissioner of Health, Dr. Zucker, issued a letter to the CDC stating that the state was going to, basically to allow districts to make that determination about wearing masks and seeking the CDC input with respect to that, but the way it was phrased was like, we're going to listen to you, but this is what we're going to do. And that was interpreted by some school districts as the green light to be able to take off the mask. Most didn't because they were waiting for the actual document to be issued by the state with respect to this, is what I've been counseling the board with respect to this directive. Some districts decided to go forward. Sachem School District is an example of that. They went forward, then the governor announced that no, the mask mandate is still in place. There was then communication from the governor's office to those districts, basically saying that if you don't comply, you risk staying open, you risk funding, the board members risk being removed. They were indicating that they were prepared to take enforcement action, which then required those school districts to pivot and then go back to the mask mandate.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I guess, we have to look at it from all aspects, and in terms of potential liability, if there was a lawsuit that claimed that, I think that, again, your school board is very tuned into the community and has very passionate discussions about, I've been representing them for many years, a multitude of issues, and this issue also. And I can assure you that they want to do what's in the best interest of all. What you're looking at, though, is almost like an avalanche, and I certainly take credence in what this gentleman was saying about some other, documents out there regarding the efficacy of masks and so forth. But all the agencies in the state pertaining to public health and education have come out at this point recommending the wearing of mask. So you're going to look at it from potential liability, where if you have a student who claims that they were infected or they came down with an ailment because of wearing the mask, they sued the school district. The school district's defense in that case would be that either we're following a specific order which told us that we have to do this, or there's recommendations from the agencies that say that we had to do this. On the converse, if they don't do it, they go mask optional, and a student contracts COVID in school, a parent could bring a lawsuit against the district saying that because you went mask optional, now you are liable. You ignored the recommendations of the CDC, or you ignored a directive, so therefore you're liable. So it could work both ways. We have to factor that all in. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Right. So, right. Yeah, I think that those are points that you'd want to raise with the State Department of Health. My role with respect to the Board of Education is to provide guidance as to what directives are being issued and what are your responsibilities with respect to that directive. Again, right now, I can't give them that advice until that directive gets issued. I'm just going to go Mr. Montori just because he raised his hand.
That's what he said.
No, they could sue you. They could sue you. If the school district went optional, right, there's a possibility that if you went optional, yes. Yeah, so your grandson gets the virus, and your grandson and you as the grandparent or the child's parent says the reason my child got the virus was because we were optional. Yes. I'm sorry.
Back left.
Over here. I'm sorry, I ignored this side of the room. Right. So anybody can sue the school district, and I handle many suits from people suing school districts. So the school district has to make decisions. Sometimes those decisions are taken away from the school district because a law is passed or a directive, and they're told that they have to do this. This is what was in place last year. There were districts that were having discussions about going mask optional, but were given specific directive that you cannot do that by the state. So now we have our governor has said publicly that I am directing my Department of Health to issue a directive. So, you know, in terms of a liability standpoint, we need to see what that directive states so the board can make an informed decision as to its next course of action. You know, basically what's so unique about East Islip is a lot of times I'm talking to the board behind closed doors and the public, you know, doesn't hear that because I'm the attorney, I'm giving them advice. I find myself in East Islip giving the same advice to the public because they want me to do that. So what I told them is what I'm telling you, is that you have to look at what the directive is and you have to look at what are the potential ramifications if you don't follow that directive. And that's the advice that I give them. Yes, any other questions? Sure.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I think we should direct questions to the floor.
But ma'am, we can't have you guys arguing with one another. You can go outside and do that. Any other questions from the lawyer? All right, let's move on. Thank you, Neil.
All right, whoa. Ladies, gentlemen. Ladies.
Okay, let's continue with the meeting. Guys, please.
Ladies. Guys, hold on a second. Mr. Colonellis is exactly right. Now, we are going to listen to everyone. We have a nice list of people who want to speak. But this is exactly what we were referring to earlier. People are entitled to their opinion. It's America. And if you can't be respectful and... Now, you know what? Here's the frustration. Too many people, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, but true scientific evidence takes five years to really come up with. And hold on a second. So now you have experts on both sides. And if you remember, at the last meeting, we asked you to email and call us, and I was very generous to volunteer Stephanie and Joanne to answer the phone. Okay? So now, the board has said repeatedly, has said repeatedly that they support mask optional. They have sent me out into the world to meet with the organizations and the groups that go and lobby. I do chuckle sometimes when people call me and tell me what to do. And when I say to them, well, you could write to your elected officials, they'd much rather have me do that for them, and I don't mind. I talk to them all the time. But quite frankly, you know, being absolutely privy, it breaks my heart personally to see how bitterly divided this community is over this topic. You could, you know, look, we could go to the county, we could go to the country, but I'm not worried about everybody else. I'm just worried about East Islip right now. And the board has agonized. Every single email that you sent to me, I forwarded to them. I did not, and usually I call people. Yeah, there weren't enough minutes in the day. But I thanked everybody for their opinion. I thanked them for taking the time to write. And we are, right now, bitterly divided. I see friends, I see families that are divided. And you know what? That just allows whatever goes on, it perpetuates the inertia, the spinning of the wheels. Now, I'm going to applaud the board because I've attended numerous meetings. My association president has actually been in meetings with the new governor. There are signals coming out that maybe, just maybe, there's going to be progress. But we still need to be a little patient. Now, I'm not going to read the whole letter, but we wrote a letter to the governor. And I have to say this, the people on the extreme sides that I've spoken to have the same reaction to this. They're not happy with me. And I'm like, okay, so we have some common ground. You guys be mad at me. It's not necessarily my letter, but this is the job you hired me for, you know, to be the lightning rod, because we have to channel this negative energy into some sort of positivity. Now, I'm not going to read the whole letter. It'll be posted tomorrow. We want to send it to the governor first, and then we're going to post it. Our communities, and this is just excerpts, our communities are bitterly divided across the state over this mask issue. It saddens us that neighbors turn on neighbors because over the past several months, we have had no decisive action from the executive branch of our government. I'll get to the sort of the modest proposal or the compromise proposal in a minute. In order to conquer this disease, we must learn to adjust and live with it. It's here, and it is probably a flu-like thing, but we have to learn how to live with it. Divided communities are wasting, because I see it here. We are wasting valuable time arguing with each other in a fruitless quest to be right. This is not about being right. This is about learning how to live with something. This is about learning how to move forward. I told the administrators today, I've never been more excited for a school year, because we have a chance to teach kids that, hey, when evil knocks on your door, you knock it right out of the park. The kids are setting a wonderful example for me. Our proposal will probably not be liked or accepted by the extremists on both sides of this issue. But we feel we have a safe, healthy compromise that will begin to pull us back together. Creating competition. Competition is healthy, and we're asking for target numbers that will create healthy competition. And they end it with, Governor Hochul, we implore you to tear down that wall of secrecy and uncertainty that has clouded the executive branch for too long. You can't tell people to wear masks and then tell them, you got to wear them, but we can't tell you when you're going to take them off. That's like saying, you're going to jail, and I'll let you know when you're going to get out. Governor Hochul, tear down that wall that is dividing our communities. Governor Hochul, tear down that wall of secrecy and ambiguity and give us concrete numbers and concrete goals based on, now, you can base it on a number of things, but take the state positivity rate. Long Island is always lower, so it is always higher, so that helps us. We believe people in New York will rise up and meet the challenge. What we're saying is, if you tell us at 4% we have to wear a mask, can we take it off when it goes below 4? Can we go to a restaurant style where they wear it on the bus, they wear it in the hall, and they take it off in the class? And then if it goes below 2 or 1, I'm not a medical expert, but if we know that we can get this disease under control and take our masks off, it teaches a wonderful lesson to kids. It forces us to pull together. It doesn't force us to sit in a meeting and yell and see who can yell the loudest. And Lord knows, I have gotten, and I appreciate it all, but I've heard from a large portion of this community, and I will say this, I love you guys. It's a great town. It's a hard-working town, but right now we are bitterly divided. And I do want to stay here as superintendent, but what Mr. Block has failed to say is, and one of my colleagues got the phone call from Albany. He forgot to add that they'll take the board out, and then they'll say, hey, Mr. Dolan, give us your license. You're not going to be the superintendent anymore. And as much as, well, I don't know, I could go do something else. I'm not worried about that. I don't want to. So we know, no matter what we say, people are not going to be happy. We know no matter what we say, people are not going to be happy. But just because you yell doesn't mean we hear you better. And just because someone has a different opinion than you doesn't make them stupid. Now, Mr. Block has been very good. He's answered the questions. I'm not complaining, because ask Mr. Montori. One of the things I miss the most about Mr. Montori not being on the board is he doesn't call me 3 times a day anymore. He only calls me twice a day. And I've never called anybody 30 times. I just want to be clear about that. But it's time to move forward. What we said in this letter is we said to the governor, hey, congratulations, good luck, God bless you. We pray for all our elected officials. And we said, we will comply if given a directive. We will comply if given a directive. But simply, Madam Governor, if we're willing to put aside maybe our personal beliefs, personal feelings, will you please give us the key to unlock the mystery? And you know something? Everybody went to sleep, myself included. July was nice. Nobody called. I was in meetings all the time with superintendents because we were doing a what-if game. Now, I can't address what we read on the internet, TV, but I know this to be a fact. I put my hand up and took an oath and said, I will uphold the laws and the directives and whatever. I'm not even sure what I took an oath to do, but the attorneys assured me that I can lose my license if I don't follow a directive. And I could be a martyr, and I could get a round of applause, and I could walk out the door, and then if you guys all went at each other, I would be sad, but I wouldn't look back. I've grown to love this place, but I'm not going to sit here and watch people tear into each other. And I'm going to tell you right now, the emails are split. If the emails were 90-10, okay, but they're not. The emails are split. There's fear, there's anger, there are a lot of things. But we got to turn that into hope. So our hope, and I'm hoping that other organizations around the state will join us, we had a governor who was ruling like an emperor, and no one questioned him, or no one could question him. We have a new governor. Maybe that governor will listen. And you know something? It's a good lesson for kids here. When kids are given things, when kids inherit money, when kids are just given things, it usually turns into a bad situation. But when you say to someone, if you work and you earn it, you appreciate it. And unfortunately, none of us wanted to be here. Look, I'm in the twilight. The board was very generous. They allowed me, they said, if you want to stay and graduate with the kindergartners you started with, which I never thought, I never thought. This is the twilight of my career, and I want it to be the best light of my career.
I like that guy.
So, all I'm going to say to you is, if the governor gives us a directive, we are going to follow it. But we are going to push hard and as hard as we can, and everyone in this state, it's reasonable to demand on both sides of this argument, whether you're a mask wearer or you're not, when can we take these masks off? Because if we have a goal, and we tell kids this all the time, we go, EI pride, and some people are foolish and think EI pride is about winning a championship. You can be a champion and never win a game. EI pride is about working hard. EI pride is about coming to work every day, every single day, and doing the best you can to improve. EI pride is about being able to look at yourself at the end of the day and say, did I get better? I treat people with respect. I'm empathetic. I'm caring. I'm kind. I work hard. I have a championship mentality. That's what we want for our kids. How are we going to beat this disease, and how are we going to get our politicians to realize you can't just tell us something and not tell us how we can undo it? Now, we're going to listen to you. We're going to sit here. You can say your piece. But please, all I ask, because what really does hurt me are there are people that will not come to certain meetings or will not go to the podium because they don't want to hear the yelling and the screaming. That's why the votes, that's why you have a secret ballot. But how about this? I think in 1 second, I want you to give Mr. Block a nice round of applause because he had somewhere to be today with his family and he didn't go. He came here to be with us. And then Mr. Zachary is going to finish the business portion of the meeting, and then the podium is yours and we're here to listen. But we're going to listen to everybody and we're going to do it in a polite, respectful fashion. Otherwise, no reason to stick around. How about a nice round of applause to Mr. Block?
Thank you, Neil.
Mr. Dolan.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Good night.
Are there any public comments on agenda items only? Okay, yeah, there's no agenda. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, position abolitions, employment appointments, tenure appointments, and salary changes in accordance with applicable provisions of education law and civil service law as cited in the non-certified personnel attachments. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, position abolitions, employment appointments, tenure appointments, and salary changes in accordance with the applicable provisions of education law and civil service law as cited in the certified personnel attachments. Can I get a motion?
Wow, second.
Discussion.
I just want to know how many positions we still have available before the school year begins.
We don't have any teaching positions?
No,
that
not
we-
teaching.
Oh,
I didn't know if I was.
oh, okay. We have probably about 7 positions to fill that have been filled, but we're waiting for their paperwork. You know, we've gone through the interview process and so on and so forth, and they range in paraprofessionals and perm subs.
Okay. So there's no openings, really? We just haven't...
Correct.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda items 9.1 through 9.7. Does anybody want anything removed from the consent agenda? All in favor of the consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
It's consented too. Old business.
Where'd he go?
Mr. Montori left. That's the Mr. Montori portion.
I'm gonna do this as old business, I guess. All right? You ready to rock?
Let me get out of the way.
You just let, oh, wait. Look who's here. Another round of applause for Mr. Montori.
Old business.
I got a question, Mr. Dolan. A series of questions. All right, so as everyone knows, we've been doing this since August of last year, so it's a year now. Here we go. Ready? Can you explain exactly what you mean by the restaurant style that you've been discussing?
And I'm not even, it's so hard now because, one of the ladies was talking about the different rules, and that is a problem, different agencies have different rules, and the government agencies are trying to line up, so at least we have one set of rules. But the restaurant style was when you would wear your mask into the restaurant, and then once you're seated at your table, you can take it down. And what one of the ideas we were talking about was kids, would wear it on the bus, they would walk to their class, and once they're seated at their seat, take it down. So.
Can you, I guess we answered the cafeteria questions. We're working on getting that as best as we can, as close to September 2019 as possible.
Yes, we want it to be as normal as possible and not infringe on, into the quarantining.
Okay. Still no masking outside or for PE? Outside PE?
Yeah, almost don't want to talk about it because they don't seem to be saying anything about it. So we feel that in the absence of a directive, we're going to go with what we went with last spring, and that is, outside recess, and, recess is not going to be segregated, and no masks.
All right, the other thing, are there still signs in the buildings, dots on the floors, arrows on the, any of the mitigation propaganda that has been up in the past, is that still up?
There is some signage, the floor stuff is there. We did have a discussion the other day, and, the worry is if they go the other way, to take it up and try to put it back down again. I mean, we do, I don't want to say nobody seems to notice it, but it doesn't seem to be upsetting anybody, and it
All right,
is.
so at the very least, I understand the arrows and the dopey dots on the floor, but can we at least take the signs down? I mean, the paper signs.
Which signs?
Wear a mask, any of that, wash your hands, any of that. I just don't want a constant reminder that, you know, what does that do but promote fear? Kids know exactly what they're supposed to be doing at this point in time.
We'll speak to Mr. Gagliano.
You know, I don't want to walk around a building and just see that stuff. I
Well,
mean,
the
everyone
only-
knows what to do. We've been doing it for 531 days.
No, the only thing I will say is we do want them to wash their hands.
Yeah, I know, but they, you know,
And
I don't think a sign,
You know, to kind of get out of front and something else, we're putting all new bathrooms in the elementary schools, and we were out of compliance for the ADA, and you know, in my message today, I thanked the teachers for their patience, because, you know, we had bathrooms that didn't have sinks for years, and, you know, the Department of Health would have had a field day with us. And if we didn't fix it now, and we did all the bond work and did other things, and they came in and saw it, they'd make us rip it out and do it anyway. So there are going to be some changes to the bathrooms, and especially at the elementary, as they pertain to having a sink in the bathroom to wash your hands, so you don't have to touch the doorknobs and go out, so.
okay. What about there's no mask signs out there? There's no announcements in the buildings about wearing a mask and, all right, as long as that's not happening, I'm good with that.
No, I mean, look, anything is possible, but there was never a directive to make announcements. we're not,
All right.
the school districts do that, but we're
I
not
know.
doing that.
I don't want to do that.
We have taken a very low-key approach.
Okay. You know, one of the concerns of the parents in the K-2 buildings is the fact that we're covering these little kids' faces, and, you know, they don't get to see the emotions and the inflections of the teacher, and the way in which the, you know, how to learn to speak the words correctly and all that. So can we order transparent masks? I know those creepy masks like the one you wore that time. You know, the transparent masks for the kids and for the teachers, at least in the K-2 buildings. You know, we have supply lists of pencils and crayons and things like that, but a suggestion for a transparent mask so that a kid can see his teachers smile and they can see the kids smile. You know, like I've been saying since the beginning, teaching is not giving information, it's receiving information. And one of the reasons why I've been against it from the beginning is it's very hard as a teacher to receive any information from a kid with a mask on.
You know, that's an excellent idea. We could certainly look into it. You know, as I just said, we've been pretty low-key. You know, and notice, we went from 6 foot to 3 foot, which to me, unless told otherwise, it should allow us more mask breaks. The only cautionary tale there is, some children don't like the clear mask because they feel like.
No, I'm not saying required, but.
I'm just, okay.
As
I mean,
opposed to us
can-
giving them out some sort of medical grade mask, let's try to up our game a little bit.
I think we could ask Mr. G to order some clear masks.
What's that?
We could ask Mr. G to order some clear masks.
This came up the other night, and we had a meeting, and I had no idea about it. I don't know if anybody looked at it yet. The labeling on the mask box, have we looked at that yet?
You know, I did, I looked at it today. The question said that essentially, and I'm going to paraphrase, I'm not trying to be flip, but we had a meeting the other night. It was a great meeting. It went on for a while, and there was one concern that the mask box said, this mask doesn't prevent anything. I think I'm summarizing it. I have a mask box. I looked at it. The mask box absolutely does not say that. There was, you know, it wasn't there, not the mask
Okay.
box.
I just wanna make sure.
I have was given to me by the, you know, our buildings and grounds facilities.
Okay. And lastly, you know, the mask break thing, how are we wording our objective with the mask break? Like, what are we going to say so that everyone's clear that we're encouraging mask
And
breaks?
this goes back to the gentleman in the green shirt over there. And I happened to be in the room with the 4 elementary principals today, and I tried to run out as fast as possible. Because, you know, in the way things run, Dr. Bells is going to work with them, and Mr. Manzo's working with the secondary, because they have different needs. And they started to ask me questions, and you know, I do like to, you know, be supportive and helpful, but in the absence of the directive or the direction, we've made a decision that, and look, I have all due respect for the other for some other districts, but when you say, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then a directive comes and changes that, you know, when you have several hundred employees, it's hard enough when you say it once. It's hard enough when you put it in a memo or an email or even a video to get everybody rowing in the same direction. But, you know, and we're coming down to the wire, and I do applaud the administrative team because they're being extremely patient, and how we're going to craft our mask break around whatever the directive is so that we can give our teachers and students as much leeway as possible. So they'll tell us what, you know, the directive will come, we'll get Mr. Block, and then, you know, suffice it to say, I mean, we'll have it. It could be as late as next Tuesday, but the teachers are back next Wednesday, so we really need something by Tuesday to get to the administration and get out to the public. But again, and I think I applaud Jericho School District because they, you know, they made it part of, they were the first one to go back. So they made that part, the news, they knew the news was coming. The, you know, Channel 12 always goes to the first district that opens. And, you know, the superintendent there, I think he's been superintendent almost 30 years. And Hank is a very, you know, skilled and well-respected, you know, administrator. And, you know, the message was clear to everybody. You got to make sure you got mask breaks. You got to make sure you have mask breaks. And, you know, I don't know him personally. I've been in the room with him. I've sat with him. I actually coached his nephew in Little League. And I've listened to the way he, you know, he operates. And he knew he was in a position where he had to lead us. And so just the fact that on News 12 you keep hearing about mask breaks, it's going to allow parents, you know, if they're not getting mask breaks, they'll let us know and we'll work on it. So
Well, it also, and this again came up the other night, is it allows the kids to know, right? A lot of these kids are rule followers. They want to do the right thing by adults. So adults who say, hey, you know, if you're not feeling comfortable, it's okay. Like, I hope that becomes our, a way of discussing mask breaks, that it becomes part of our, like EI Pride is part of our culture. The kids not to be afraid to take a mask break should be part of our culture. We don't want to, you know, again, kids are rule followers. And I just don't, you know, we're talking about how adults are going to react. I want to make sure that the kids know, if you need a mask break, you take a mask break. And again, if that's not working for an individual student or because of teachers, I get it, teachers are nervous, then, like you said, talk to the teacher, talk to the principal, and let's work something out. But kids should have the option. I mean, we're trying to, as best we can, get through every little crack and every little edge to give the kids as much normalcy as we had in 2019. That's all I'm saying, and I just want to make sure that we're not only just thinking about, I know there's a lot of things that go into it, you know, I've said that before, but anything we can do to make it a little less restrictive.
I think, and here's a good analogy. We're always on the lookout for a child that sits by themselves in the cafeteria or is out on the playground and not interacting. And, you know, we've said this to the administrators, and we're going to continue to say it. And I, you know, I had the privilege of sitting with every teacher in the district last year, and, you know, it was really a great experience. And I feel they were honest, and they expressed their opinions and their feelings, and, you know, the gamut of emotions, you know, it ran the whole gamut. But, you know, I was very proud. Overwhelmingly, the faculty said, you know, never thought we were going to have to do, and then I'm talking using, you know, Zoom and, you know, distance learning, and we, you know, everybody has a computer, and they said, you know, never, you know, I'm at an age where I didn't think that was going to happen in my career, but now that it's here, they were excited to try new things, which I thought was excellent. But when it comes to this disease, I can tell you the faculty mirrors the community, and you have some people who are very worried and some people who are not, you know, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. And one of the things we've said to the administrative team is we have to be very aware of our faculty and support them, because they're the ones in the room with the kids. And by extension then, look to the children, and if there's a child sitting there who's, not ever removing their mask, we get, how are you going to approach them? And this is, we have social workers, psychologists, we have guidance counselors in the elementary school. And again, treat them as individually as possible and try to open as normally as possible. And I trust and I believe that the faculty and staff, not just our teachers, but our aides, our cafeteria workers, people see kids all the time. So I'm very confident, Mr. Carpluck, that we will encourage kids to take appropriate mask breaks.
All right, I'm done. Let's let everybody speak.
Any other old business? Any new business?
Got to do something about the weight in the backpacks, but we'll get to that next week.
By the way, I know that the messenger might not have been there, but my daughter, the backpack, it was amazing how heavy the backpacks were. They made them take them home every day, every book.
Are we
the
doing that this year?
computers. It was very heavy. No, this was in third grade.
Maybe we don't have to do that
and
anymore?
it was an issue. She couldn't get it off the bus.
No.
So
But,
hopefully.
folks, hold on a second.
we can-
Remember, at this time last year, we were being told you can't use the lockers, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I remember our teachers saying to us, John, you told us to take everything out of the room, strip it bare. We don't want to. So we kept things in the classroom that technically we weren't supposed to, and we were okay. Because the teacher said, look, if they're not supposed to share this stuff and use it, we'll just put a little something there, so, but at least the kids will see books, and they'll see color, and they'll see things. So, sometimes sometimes we get caught up in a negative. This year, knock on wood, we keep saying as close to normal as possible, but at this time last year, and I choose not to really go back and remember it, but we weren't allowed to leave stuff, and we told kids, yes, they had to take everything back and forth. We're hoping this year is going to be much more normal.
Thank you, sir. Okay, no other new business? Okay, public comments, and we started accepting questions by email when the board meetings were closed. But as you can see tonight, now the board meetings are open, they're well attended. So if you want to email us any questions you have, we're more than happy to answer your questions. You want to email us with statements, you're for masks, you're against masks, whatever argument you want to make. We'd love to hear from you, hear your comments. But as far as the emails, I want this read at board meetings. And I feel like the Grinch should steal Christmas here going through the phone book. Mary Smith is for masks. Mary Lou Who is against masks. And that's not productive in any way. So from now on, again, please email us your questions, your statements. We'd love to hear from you. But if you want something read at a board meeting, please come down. We'd love to see you, and you guys could read it out loud yourself. We're going to take the public comments. A lot of people signed up. All right, like Mr. Dolan's been talking about. I know a lot of you feel very strongly about both sides. Please be respectful of the 3 minutes. We do have it going. The last meeting we did not. There were only a few people there, but this is a different story. So please be respectful. Whatever you're saying, you want to wrap it up, please finish your thoughts, but please be mindful of the 3 minutes. And like Mr. Dolan said, please be respectful of those who maybe don't agree with your position. Just let's keep the meeting civil and going well. All right? Stephanie. We can. I don't think they can, though. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Board of Education, Mr. Dolan, the staff and teachers at East Islip School District, and my fellow neighbors here in the East Islip community, the opportunity for me to speak and to be heard. I've been an East Islip resident since 2004, and I have 3 children in the district. I'm a public school teacher entering my 18th year teaching right here in Suffolk County at one of the largest high schools on Long Island. We are here tonight to show our continued support to you, the Board of Education and Mr. Dolan, as well as the teachers and staff in the East Islip School District in instituting the New York State mandated universal mask policy for the upcoming school year. We know our children learn best when they are in school full-time. The best way to ensure that quality education in the safest environment possible is with a universal mask mandate. It is what got us to this point today, in this very minute, at this meeting together. We know it works already. The alternative is not what is educationally sound for our children. Our governing institutions, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the New York State Department of Education, the Suffolk County Department of Health, and the New York State Department of Health unanimously agreed. If a child tests positive in the classroom, as long as the other children are wearing a mask, they do not have to quarantine. You've all said it multiple times tonight, and I'm not reading off my paper right now. I'm a teacher in the classroom. The quarantining process was horrendous. The contact tracing on your end is, nobody understands it, how bad it is, and I see you laughing, because it's the truth. This is one thing we can all agree on. It does not matter which side you are on in regards to your children, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. Universal mask mandates is the only way it'll allow our children to remain in person, learning where we all know they learn best. If we had mask optional, if you allowed the parent choice, as the attorney already explained, the minute somebody tests positive in the room, you have to quarantine. Kids are missing more school than they are present. Nobody likes this. Trust me, I don't. I'm wearing two, and I'm vaccinated, but I'm very ill. I know it doesn't appear that way, but I am. I don't even know if the vaccine worked for me. That's how sick I am. Okay, but I teach. I'm a public teacher. I love children. I love what I do, and I continue to. What is best for our children is to be in-person learning as much as possible. And unfortunately, this is the only solution right now to allow that to happen because of if you just want to agree on one thing, the quarantine process. I don't think this is forever. I don't think it is. I really don't. But I think for now, until we're ready for it to be safe, it's what we have to do. My friend works in a Texas school district. On the 5th day of school, 228 students tested positive and 78 staff members. They did not reach 200 positive cases till November 30th last year. They're closing schools down right now because masks were optional. That's my fear as an educator. That's my fear as a parent in the district. Thank you all for all you have done and will continue to do to provide a quality education in the safest learning environment possible.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope you feel better. Stephanie?
Good evening, Mr. Dolan, and good evening to the board. My name is Chris. I'm a parent of a child at Timber Point Elementary School. I've lived in this town on and off for about 35 years and consistently for the past 10 years. I know today's a somber day, so I'm going to try and cut down on the drama, some of which we've already heard. I want to thank you, Mr. Dolan. I want to thank the board overall for your handling of managing our school district over the past year and a half. This is my first time at a board meeting, and I see it's obviously very contentious, and people throw around a lot of things. But I have watched you from afar. I respect the integrity with which you carry out your duties, and I appreciate it, and I want you to know that there are many of us in the district that appreciate it. I also want to thank you for having enforced the mask mandate over the prior year. I think that it's been a major factor in preventing our school district from becoming a vector for spreading COVID. That said, I want to register my support for a mask mandate universally over our school district for the coming year. Now, obviously, we're a little bit in flux right now. We're waiting for it to come down from the governor, but we pretty much know that it's going to happen. And we know that that's going to impose a ministerial obligation upon this district to respect it and to do that. And, you know, you kind of, and Mr. Block earlier kind of leveled a bit, but I think it needs to be made more clear that if we don't follow those duties, we open up our district to a ton of liability. And I mean, in my office, I've seen millions of dollars lost from schools and government actors who don't follow those duties. Now, despite what many non-experts will say, the experts have reached a consensus that masks work. We know that they work to reduce spread. We know that they work to reduce the transmission of COVID. We also know that right now, COVID is spreading to children in this country more than ever. And we also know that unmasking policy has been a failure. We see it in states like Florida, Texas, Mississippi, basically these southern states where they instituted unmasking. They opened their schools a few weeks ago, and vast amounts of kids have come down with COVID and filled up their hospitals. We don't want that around here. Now, I respect that in the future we're going to defeat COVID. It's going to be by wearing masks and instituting vaccines. I want to reiterate to you that we are here, the parents and the residents of this town, who support what you are doing in instituting the universal mask mandate. And I thank you for hearing us all tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, Superintendent Dolan and the board. Thank you for having us here tonight and taking comments from the public. I am a parent of 2 in the district. I also graduated from East Islip, and I have to say that bathroom has not changed since 1991. I can verify this. I'm also an attorney, and I work in the New York City Public Schools. So I have I've heard a lot of these arguments. I've seen it all. I've heard it all. Not new. I want to say that, echoing some of the previous comments tonight, I support the science, and I hope you do too. Everyone's going to tell you what I think I'm distant enough to take this off. Everyone's going to tell you what some YouTube video that they found that supports some, conspiracy theory about why vaccines are causing crazy things. We know this isn't true. I think we all have to have a foundational level of scientific belief. That's not me, is it?
No.
So I emailed you all, and I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to say, I reiterate that I respect your positions, and I hope you follow the science wherever it leads. My kids were in Brooklyn up through May of last year when we moved out here, and I have to say, all I want as a parent is for my kids to be in school full time. That's all that matters to me right now. It was horrible. Remote learning in an apartment was a disaster for everybody, including me. Please just know that as a well-intentioned member of this town, of this school district, all I want is for my kids to be in school full-time, no matter how that plays out. That's my desire, that's my goal. And I trust that your leadership in this year going forward. I respect what Mr. Dolan, what you said before. I really appreciated what you said. I was going to come up here with statistics about the new cases in Suffolk County, and that's not important anymore. It's just not. What's important is what you said, that we're working together. We all want the same thing. We might go about it in different ways. We might believe different evidence that we've seen, but I trust leadership to follow what the respected institutions, scientists, medical community, what they're recommending, and that's my position tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. And welcome to East Islip.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
First, let me thank you, the faculty, the staff, the board. From my vantage point, you have done a commendable job at handling a very tough situation. I'm here today to urge you to uphold, to enforce, and to stay vigilant on the mask mandate, the universal mask mandate, that I believe will be coming down as a directive. As a teacher in a neighboring school district, I have a clear perspective on how implementation of masks looks inside a school. And from my vantage point, it is clear that when students, teachers, and the community work together to stay safe, with the use of masks, we all win. I need my daughter, who attends at Timber Point Elementary School, to be safe. I trust her with the school district. She is my only child. She is my life. The science and our elected officials have made it clear that masks and vaccines are the way to go. I agree that students must be able to advocate for themselves with regard to feeling comfortable in school. And while mask breaks are needed at times, it is imperative that this does not turn into maskless kids, if that is not the directive and if that is not the universal mandate, or adults indoors. And finally, I'd like to have this concern addressed. As we await the directive, my concern is that this bitterness over this issue will affect our children. This is very troubling. The possibility of that is very troubling to me. What is being done within the school to ensure that our children will not be caught in the middle of this bitter and divisive debate? Thank you.
No, as we mentioned before, with some of the federal money we got, we added, some literacy support, because when kids learn how to read, they can learn to make their own decisions. We have guidance counselors in the elementary school now. We are vigilant in terms of, like I said before, we always look for the child that's being affected by whatever. It could be things at home, things in, but I'm going to say something right now. Two things. I appreciate your kind words, and they're nice. When you're angry, you can direct it at me. But, Dr. Bells, Mr. Manzo, Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Parker, and really, especially Mrs. Mann, because she's the one that sits closest to me during the day, they deserve more thanks, because, and you can ask Mr. Montori, when I lose my bearings a little bit, they're the ones that, they're really driving the day-to-day operation. And one of the things that really warms my heart is I'm sitting here watching you folks come up here and express your opinions, and I'm watching people politely clap at the end, and I know for a fact that some of the people that are clapping don't necessarily agree with you, but they know you're from East Islip. And this is what we want our kids to see. This is what we want to foster. And if we can disagree and then shake hands and move on, that's the best thing for the kids to see. So it's a combination. We want to make sure they can read. We added a little bit of mental health support. You've got an excellent team to my left. You've got very receptive people to my right. And you know what? I could not be prouder right now than to watch how this audience is simply listening to each other, clapping. You don't have to agree. And we're gonna pull this together. And like I said, once we get the directive, we're gonna work to make it all work. So the best example for the kids is what I'm seeing right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good evening. I was initially planning to speak tonight about some of our issues, or my issues, with clubs and activities, but a friend of mine told me to table that because it's going to get lost in all of our mask discussions. Last year was a roller coaster ride of flip-flopping, poor communications, and bad planning, which we've all had enough of. As for masks, we've known for a few weeks that the new governor planned on instituting a mask-wearing mandate for schools. It's a done deal. It doesn't benefit students to have a board in any way add to the confusion about not following this mandate, no matter how much yelling and screaming you're hearing. Mr. Dolan, you said if there's a directive, we'll follow it. I thank you for saying that. In addition to concerns for the health and safety of our children, the ramifications, as we heard from our attorney, to the district for going against the mandate would be disastrous. I'd like to thank Mr. Dolan, the board, the administration and committees, and our East Islip faculty and staff for soldiering through last year. There were a lot of bumps in the road, and we came out the other side. I want to thank my fellow families in East Islip. We don't all agree on a lot. Nobody does, and that's fine. But we care about our kids and our community. We have a sign in our house that says East Islip, where everybody knows your name. We're a unique town and a tight community, and we'll push through another year of this pandemic together, and we'll see the other side. COVID's been beyond challenging, to say the least, and if we want it to end, following the safety protocols and vaccines will ultimately end this nightmare. So this is what we're going to do to make it to the end. You do the work. That's what East Islip does. We do the work. We're a hardworking town with hardworking people, and people know us for it. The sooner we do the work, the sooner we can throw out the masks and move on to more important things. I know I've heard from Mr. Karpluk about a future innovation lab at the high school, and Mr. Dolan has assured me that great things are on the horizon. But we need to talk more. We have more to talk about than just masks. We have to talk about academics. We have to talk about music, STEM, and art. We need to talk about extracurricular activities. We need to talk about opportunities for our students. And none of that is going to happen if we keep circling COVID and masks. Mr. Dolan, for what you said about the directive, I thank you for making the right decision. Please, let's do the work to put COVID behind us and finally move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And Josh, just know that while the mask might dominate the conversation out here, we're still very much focused on the academics and doing the best for the kids educationally and discussing that. So it's the safety and health, obviously, are number one, but education by no means is taking a back seat. But thank you.
Hello, Mr. Dolan, Board of Education. I appreciate the fact that I know you want mask optional. So understand this information that I'm about to give you, I'm not directing at you, but more I'm sharing with you based upon research I have done and people I have spoken with. I'll get right to the point. Informed consent is required for investigational medical therapies. Regardless of the lack of safety and efficacy behind the decision to require a child to wear a mask, it is illegal to mandate EUA-approved investigational medical therapies without informed consent. Mask use for viral transmission prevention is authorized for emergency use only. Emergency use authorization by the FDA means the products are investigational and experimental only. The statute granting the FDA the power to authorize a medical product of emergency use requires that the person being administered the unapproved product be advised of his or her right to refuse administration of the product. This statute further recognizes well-settled doctrine that the medical experts or clinical research may not be performed on human subjects without the informed consent of the individual receiving treatment. The right to avoid the imposition of human experimentation is fundamental. Rooted in the Nuremberg Code of 1947, has been ratified by the 1964 Declaration of Helsinki and further codified in the United States Code of Federal Regulations. The law is very clear. It is unlawful to conduct medical research, even in the case of an emergency, unless steps are taken to secure informed consent of all participants. Furthermore, by requiring children to wear a mask, you are promoting the idea that the mask can prevent or treat a disease, which is an illegal, deceptive practice. It is unlawful to advertise that a product or service can prevent disease unless you possess competent and reliable scientific evidence substantiating that the claims are true, something that has not been provided to any of us from the school district, the CDC, the FDA, the health department, nobody. And we know because of Francis Collins, director of the NIH, who, like I said before, just came out about a week ago saying they're not basing these recommendations on anything scientific. It's anecdotal. It's anecdotal. It's basically scientific opinion. The difference between masking a child and not masking a child is that the parents who do not want their child masked can step up and provide 50 or more clinical research trials. And Mr. Dolan, I know you keep saying that these research trials take 5 to 10 years, but that's if we want to know the long-term effects. If you take a mask off a child like they did in Florida and brought it directly to the lab, you don't need 5 or 10 years to figure out all the bacteria and pathogens and everything they're being exposed to on that mask. There's a lot of evidence, and like I said, there is no scientific evidence in favor of mask wearing. We also know that this virus has a 99.997 survival rate if you were to catch it. I don't know how that is not an acceptable rate at this point, why we need to keep putting children through this. Everybody, I understand, has a different opinion, and I am all for respecting everybody's opinion. But based upon the scientific evidence that we have in our favor, we should have the choice, whether it's coming from the health department or the school board or the governor, to decide whether or not to mask our children. My child's freedom does not end where the fear of somebody else begins. And you would not go to the public pool and put a life jacket on every child there because one child can't swim. You put a life jacket on the child who can't swim. And basically, at this point, if children are being subjected to these masks, we all know they're unhealthy. It's being done intentionally. And this is a violation of the Nuremberg Code. There are legal aspects here that should be
Ms.
considered.
Simonetti, thank you. Thank you. Nuremberg. Next.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Troy Siklucky, and I'm here representing my two daughters, Alexa and Ella, who attend the East Islip School District. As we know, our new governor has mandated masks in all public schools in the state of New York. Where does this end? Why is some woman that doesn't know me or my children making decisions on what she thinks is best for my children? I have very close friends with children, and I would never tell them what I think is best for them. The overreach from our government needs to stop, and it needs to stop right now. I can't even believe I'm having this conversation. The CDC has reported that the PCR tests, which will be changed as of December 31st, changed to a new test that will be able to differentiate between COVID and influenza. So all along, the tests were unable to differentiate between COVID and the flu. We also know that many people that have died during this past year and a half of other means, car accidents, etc., that tested positive for COVID were listed as died from COVID. So we don't know the real numbers. We had a governor who put sick people in nursing homes with the most vulnerable people of all, while a hospital ship stood empty in New York Harbor. If this is truly a pandemic and is as deadly as we are being told, why are people pouring across our southern border untested and unvaccinated? Common sense tells you that you can't have it both ways. Either there's a pandemic or there's not. And if there is, anybody with common sense would know to close the southern border. As far as I'm concerned, as long as that border is open, there is no pandemic. We have Nancy Pelosi hosting a fundraiser in Napa, not one person with a mask except for the food service. None of this is adding up. Nothing makes sense. We the people are being played. Over a year and a half has gone by and still no science has been presented on the efficacy of masks. That's a simple experiment to conduct. Why don't they do it? We the people are asking you to stand up to the government overreach. This is the United States of America, and the stuff I've been seeing since this mess started does not depict the free country that I have grown up in. If it continues to go in this direction, and I'm not just referring to the topic of masks or vaccines, it will be unrecognizable in a very short time. Nothing I have seen since November 3rd, 2020 has been normal or has made any sense. We as adults need to stand up for our children. If you want to send your child with a mask, well, that is solely your decision, as it should be, solely your decision as it should be. I don't have a problem with that at all. And if I decide not to, with a 99.998% survival rate, then that should be my decision as well. Not the decision of a politician in Albany. This I see on the, that it says the next board meeting is September 23rd. I hope we're not discussing mandatory vaccines at that meeting. One more thought. There's not one person on the face of this earth that knows the long-term effects of those vaccines. There will never be a vaccine put in me or my children. And for those that have taken the vaccine, I hope it doesn't go south on you in 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, sir.
Hi. I just wanted to thank you. You guys have been very supportive and very patient and very kind. I just wanted to touch on a couple of questions. Everybody really covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate it. It's not easy to say your thoughts on something that's so serious as our children's safety. For me, the end game is the experimental shot that they're going to try to mandate. I think a lot of politics are being played. Some other people may disagree. I just have one huge question. If the masks work, then why can't I have mask optional for my child and you have masks for your child? Secondly, some people said, you know, let's get back to the more important things, like academics. To me, my child and what goes into their body and what goes on their face and their experience socially and emotionally is the most important. Also, a lot of science and experts are being thrown around, so I just have a couple of questions. Do you know who is the largest supporter financially for the WHO? It's Bill Gates. Do you know who the largest supporter financially for the American Academy of Pediatrics is? Pfizer. And thirdly, do you know who is making the contributions to the decisions of the FDA? It's the NIH. And who is the, I'm sorry, I don't have my note right here, the head of that committee that makes that bioethics decisions is Dr. Fauci's wife. So about experts, I'm not necessarily sure I know who to trust, and I don't know if anybody here knows who to trust. But I think at some point we're going to have to make a stand. But I do appreciate all of you, who mostly are volunteers, and you didn't sign up for this, I'm sure. But I just wanted you to hear my say. I'm not trying to be a pain in the neck. My kids are the most important thing, and I'm not just going to be injecting them with something that isn't proven to be safe for something that can be cured or not gotten. My husband and I both had COVID. We were literally sleeping in the same beds with our children, not knowing because the test was inaccurate at first. They were fine. So everybody's different, everybody's child is different, and I understand everybody's fear level is different. But we can't make a one-size-fits-all, and we need to be back in the United States where we do have freedom of choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, that's back to me.
Good evening. Thomas Bloor. Been a longtime resident of the district. I have 4 children. Started very young. One has already graduated East Islip. My 3 daughters are in the high school, RCK, as well as kindergarten.
Wow.
You know, look, I think even the asbestos guy admitted these masks aren't preventing small particles. The other point I have with the masks is I think it's a very difficult learning environment for these kids to wear masks almost like they're muzzled. even some of the adults standing here today. It's just very difficult to hear what you're saying. We can't see the facial expressions. And when you're talking about kindergartners, first graders, and second graders, I think it's the most detrimental to them. I appreciate the board taking, the time to listen to all of us. Unfortunately, it seems like very scary times. I feel like our constitutional rights, our freedoms are being pulled from us. We're listening to the mass media, and people are just pushing laws left and right on us. I'll keep it short. Everyone else has very nice written notes. I'm kind of shooting from the hip, but I appreciate the time, everyone.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tamara Bloor, spouse of Thomas Bloor. We have 4 kids in the district. I've been a part of this district since we were allowed to bring in homemade cupcakes and touch our kids on field day and make goodie bags for our children. And I am very sensitive and in tune to my children's emotional needs, maybe a little extra sensitive. I want to thank you all, first of all, for doing as much as you can as soon as you could. As we know, science is always changing. So in the beginning, we couldn't have backpacks. We had to have backpacks full of stuff. We couldn't leave stuff in the classrooms. We had barriers. And as science evolves, we realize now that some of those measures were over the top. We didn't have to have the barriers. As a matter of fact, they're saying now they might even spread it more. I'm not here to convince you to make a decision. I think the fact that you can see my face means you know what my decision would be. And the beautiful thing about this room here is that everybody had a choice to be masked or not masked. And I respect what you said about asking the governor at what point we can pull the masks off. The unfortunate thing is that what's going to be comfortable for me may not be comfortable for the next person. A 4% positivity rate might be fine for me to take my mask off, but someone else may not feel that comfortable. So the only way to get this country back is for freedom of choice, okay? We're arguing in this room because we're trying to prove a point, but if everybody just kept their own beliefs and did what was best for them and their family, we wouldn't even have to be arguing. And my biggest concern next is that we need your support to fight freedom of choice, because when the vaccine comes down the line, and it's coming really quickly, what's going to happen then? That's what I want to know. Where do we go from here, and when does it stop? Thank you.
Thank you.
I promise not to yell today. So I just want to thank the board. You guys are really great. You listen to all our comments. You're completely understanding. So we want to just thank you for all the time that you were put in for this. First of all, I want to say I have compassion for those who have lost loved ones from COVID, as we have also lost people and friends as well. I also have compassion for the people who are living their lives in fear, with so much fear of dying that they can't even live. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. My son last year would rip off his mask as soon as he left the school, and he would go, "Oh, thank God I could breathe again." And I would ask him, "Well, did you ask your teacher for a mask break?" And he was so afraid. "No, I can't do that. I'm going to get sent to the principal's office." And it's just a shame that our children have to feel that way. And I know his teacher would allow him to take his mask. He was just afraid to ask. So what is this doing to our children psychologically? The CDC data shows that 99% plus survival rate in those under the age of 69 years old, and over 70, it's over 95%. With our children, it's a 99.9998% chance survival rate. So our children have more of a chance of dying from the flu, drowning, suicides than they do of COVID-19. The true science shows that children are natural buffers. If teachers are getting infected with the virus, they're getting it from an outside source. They're not getting it from school. We already had COVID in our house, so we're all actually naturally immune. And if we are speaking about science, then why does the science ignore natural immunity? It just doesn't make sense. Why does my child need a mask if they're immune to the virus? There's a lack of common sense when it comes to this governmental overreach. Plain and simple, cloth masks are ineffective. Unless you're wearing a fitted N95 mask, the guidance makes no sense. And I have respect for the people in the back who are at least wearing the N95 mask, because at least they do understand that's the only mask that can stop a virus. A virus particle is 10,000 times smaller than the holes in your cloth or surgical mask. And if teachers are able to get vaccinated, and that's what they choose to do, then why do the children need masks? And then also, there's so many other problems with these masks. For instance, OSHA carbon dioxide limits for air quality are exceeded by mask wearing by 2 to 3 times. I believe breathing is a basic right. And, thank you. Speak to your dentist. Our children's teeth are decaying. This is affecting their mouths tremendously. All the bacteria and everything else that's on these masks, it's disgusting. Masks are only approved under emergency use authorization. There's no scientific evidence to show that they help, and so much evidence and scientific studies to show that they actually do harm. Masks also have the huge psychological effects, and we're teaching and allowing our children to obey unjust and unconstitutional orders so that they can go about their lives and not question anything. Why is every health agency mandating masks and vaccines? Instead, they should be promoting health. Teach people how to live healthy, eat organic foods, take supplements, get out in the sun, soak up that vitamin D. And we shouldn't even be talking here, we shouldn't be here at all. There is no pandemic. And I say this only because there's treatments. Okay, they're suppressing treatments in hospitals and firing doctors who are using them. We shouldn't be here at all. There's hydroxychloroquine, there's budesonide, ivermectin. They all have a 99% survival rate when they're using it on their patients. So there's just a lack of science and a lack of transparency when it's coming to the government. Lastly, I want to say the biggest threat to our democracy is a government that ignores our Constitution. And just one last question for the board. Something that we were thinking about, and I just don't know the board's take on it, but as far as critical race theory, is that something that you will promote in the school? Is that something you agree with? It was just something I wanted to know about.
That was one of our emailed questions, so we could cross that off the email question. Mrs. Dolan, would you like to address that, or Mr. Manzo?
We do not follow a critical theory curriculum.
All
The
right, well,
district
that's
does not.
great to know.
No, nor is it a state mandate.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Even if you are not open-minded, something in your soul has to be screaming that something isn't right with all of this. In the beginning, I can understand the concern and the caution, but now the proof is out there that the masks do not work. The proof is out there that children are not spreading COVID in schools. COVID is not spreading in school. The proof is out there that this virus is equivalent to the flu, and we all know the survival rate. People died of COVID. Yes, I had a cousin who passed away last year, but he died with COVID and lack of proper treatment that was banned in hospitals. We know COVID is real, but we need to learn to live with it, stay healthy, move on, and bring normalcy back for our children. We need to stop this all and focus on what's really important here, our kids and their social and emotional well-being. Kids get sick, but suicide and mental health issues have skyrocketed, as well as drug abuse and depression and anxiety since this pandemic. For the people who don't agree with what I'm saying, please try to see this in a different light. Put yourself in your kids' shoes. Never sharing a smile in school with friends or teachers is dehumanizing. The CDC recently put out that schools with mask mandates didn't see statistically significant different rates of COVID transmission from schools with optional policies. The science is clearly stating the masks do not work. The fact that we have to fight for our children to breathe 100% oxygen without having a germ-infested facial cloth covering their nose and mouth is beyond disturbing, and it is beyond American. I also want to make something else clear for those of you who are taking what I'm saying as selfish or foolish. If the masks worked, we wouldn't be up here wasting time. We would want our children to be safe, and if this was a real pandemic, things would be very different. If COVID was such a threat right now, nurses wouldn't be fired for not receiving the vaccine when they were subjected to it firsthand all of last year, and probably have natural immunity. As Amanda mentioned, no one is talking about natural immunity. Another red flag, the CDC changed their definition of natural immunity and of course added the word vaccine to it. And like you mentioned, if this was a real pandemic, our borders would be closed. At the last Board of Ed meeting, oh my God, I'm done already with my 3 minutes. Can I just say one more thing? My main focus tonight was really to bring up the vaccine. I just hope that when this comes, because we all know that it's coming, that you guys have our back, because we do not need to add another vaccine to the already growing schedule of vaccines for our children.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Erin, this is Jason. I grew up here and went to East Islip schools my entire life. We moved back here over 10 years ago, and our oldest is 10 years old going into 5th grade at JFK. Our youngest is in Timber Point for her very first year. After everything that's been said, the only collective thing is that everybody is here for the same thing. They're here to keep their children as healthy and as safe as possible while they're learning. We happen to be two people who agree with the governor's mandate for masking in the schools. I understand the position of everybody else who does not agree, but that's the decision that we've been making based on the information that we've been able to take a look at. That being said, I do also agree that it has to have some sort of endpoint, and sometimes maybe if we are compromising, there are parents in here who don't want to get their child the vaccine if and when it does become available. But when that happens, there's a possibility that other parents like us, after having our kids vaccinated, may feel better and more comfortable with a mask optional. So that being said, I'm hoping that we can get to a point where we can compromise, where we can get back to the point where we understand that there is fear on both sides. There's fear that our children are being detrimentally affected by the mask wearing, and there's also fear of what might happen to them health-wise if we do not. So with that respect intact, I wanted to thank the board, the staff, please, for answering all the phone calls, all the emails, every day, day in and day out, our teachers, the school staff, and the administrators, and our kids for putting up with the stress that comes with all of this, because I'm sure not only do they feel it from the situation that they have to deal with in school, because it is different for them, but they have to deal with it at home with the stress that the parents are under at the same time. No matter where you fall on the issue, I'm sure that that's something that we can all understand and identify with. So thank you again for hearing us, and I'm thanking you in advance for enforcing the mandate should the governor decide to do so.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. Sir, if you could just use the mics this way, we could hear you, but the people in the audience cannot.
I don't even know if that helped. Did it help?
Maybe if you, a little closer.
Well, as you see, I'm loud majority, so
There you go.
I'm used to being loud. I'm for the kids. They know me from football. I do anything for the kids. That's what it's about. I hear all these things that I haven't seen the signs. I know you got the best interest of the kids. No doubt about it. But I just know when you hear about their rights being taken away, they don't have a voice. We are their voice. You are their voice. I don't hear tell other kids they have to wear a mask and it's hurting them. Now, I know there's a lot of suicide. You don't hear about a lot of the stuff that's going on. They don't tell you about a lot of this stuff. Oh, if you're watching ABC News, you don't get one side of the story. I know, I'm very, very involved with a lot of this mandates. Mandates are not law. I know, the lawyer left, because he could have asked a lot of questions. You know, all these fancy words, they're not law. We didn't vote this new governor. Nobody knew who she was up until like a month ago. But everybody's willing to take her word for it. I appreciate you willing to wait, but it sounds like you already made up your mind. I mean, people are the government. People are who are funding. And you're not listening to us. You're listening to the governor. She is paid by us. We are the people. We are the people that you deal with every day, our kids. And again, I appreciate everything that he's doing. I know it's a lot of work. And I know there's not enough people that take it. I know from the coaching staff, everybody drops their kids off and wants the teachers, wants the coach. How come? But nobody wants to get involved. Well, I just can't stay silent. I gotta voice my opinion. I think the kids have a right, and it's a freedom of choice. The science, I haven't seen the science, and I keep hearing about it. I keep hearing a lot of lies. Turn on the news, just listening. I don't even have to get into politics. Just listen to the news. You'll hear all the lies you want, but I just gotta be here. I gotta say, I can't stay silent with my kids. Whatever happens, happens. I pray for them all. I wish the best. You know, I have 4 kids. My youngest is still in school, 16. He said he doesn't mind wearing a mask. But I know that's only because if he doesn't wear a mask, he can't go to school. He'd be in his bed watching the teacher on the monitor while he's in his pajamas. You know, what 16-year-old wouldn't like that? He's not getting an education. I'm sorry, my 19-year-old, she's up in the University of Rhode Island. Thanks to East Islip School District. I think they did a great job with it. But now what I see them doing is failing, and they're just holding. And when they come out with this vaccine, everybody's going to say, well, that's what they mandated. It is what it is. It's not law. We never voted on it. We are a free nation. We are America. We have rights. Constitution. I didn't bring it. I shouldn't vote on the Constitution because I could pinpoint a lot of things. I don't want to take up too much time, but I just got to say, I got to speak my mind. I just got to stand up. Thanks for hearing me, and thanks for holding the meeting and bringing certain things to our attention. I know I hear about asbestos. That scares me more than COVID. I'm a contractor, and I know about asbestos. I know I can't work anywhere near when they're 8. Not in the same building, that's what it is. I don't have to be an expert, but I just know. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have three daughters in the district. One is going into 12th grade, the other 10th, and my youngest, who just turned 8, is going into third grade. My older 2 don't care about the mask because they said that the teachers don't implement it in the high school. They're willing to push the envelope at that age, so it's not consistent with them. So they're like, why even bother coming here? I'm here to advocate for my youngest. I'm glad that Stephanie brought up mental health. I don't know why mental health is not being considered. It's mental health. My daughter is diagnosed with anxiety. Okay, since this pandemic, she's gotten a 504. She's in therapy. She went to school every single day last year crying. Okay, the mornings were filled with stomach aches, not eating breakfast, coming home from school with headaches. How am I supposed to send my kid to school with peace of mind, putting a mask on her face, knowing that this kid is fearful of going into school? The comfort that she finds is seeing smiles on her teachers' faces, her classmates smiling, being able to socialize. That's all being taken away. I can't tell you, how many nights of sleep that I've lost for my child because I don't know how I can get through another year with getting her to school and having a peace of mind. Right now, she's texting me nonstop. She doesn't want to leave my side. She won't go to play dates anymore. She won't stay with family members. It's a nightmare. Nobody thinks about the mental health. Nobody's thinking about that, which is going to go into depression, substance abuse, suicide. That's where you see kids dying, not COVID, okay? These kids went all summer. Summer camps, no masks. Preschools, no masks, no outbreaks. My kids lived a normal life this summer. How do I expect to send them back and force a mask on my child that has such anxiety that it breaks my heart as a parent that I can't fix it for her? I need people to fight for these kids. We all need you guys to fight. I couldn't even bring up school to my daughter. My husband, we were in Target. He suggested to her, let's buy school supplies. She said, I want to go home. I feel like I have to throw up. This is what it's doing to my daughter. I have to be the voice for her. I can't comply, and I cannot put my kids' mental health at risk anymore for other people to have their kids feel safe. If these masks are effective, then they should feel safe. I should have the choice as a parent to let my kid breathe in oxygen, okay? Nobody's talking about the RSV virus that's spiking. What about natural immunity? These kids aren't wearing masks effectively. These young kids, they're touching their faces, they're taking them off, they're putting them on, they're touching their desks. That's like a germ waiting to, that's worse than COVID. I mean, these kids have to be exposed to germs. Natural immunity. I'm losing my place here because I want to get through like a lot, and I know I'm past my time, but just bear with me. This is a respiratory virus. It's not going to go away anytime soon. We need to learn to live with it, and we need to learn to let our kids not live in fear anymore. It's been 18 months. I can't do it anymore. These kids they deserve so much more. These young kids, it's just, it could bring tears to my eyes right now. It's just so detrimental, and people aren't looking into that aspect of what it's doing. And people talking about liabilities, what about when it's too late and there's kids committing suicide over this? This is a real thing. Mental health needs to be addressed, okay? I'm living it, I'm telling you. I'm not up here speaking statistics. This is my life. My kid is affected by this. It's a nightmare. I wrote all this stuff down, but I'm just speaking by emotions right now. I want to have a choice for my child to be able to breathe during the day. I don't want her sitting at her desk all day wearing a mask. It's not healthy. It's causing staph infections, fungal infections, dental issues. My kid comes home with a headache almost every day. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop. We got to learn to live with it. It's not going anywhere. It's all political games. I'm done. I can't. People need to fight for our kids. It's not enough. Thank you.
Hi, guys. I won't stand up here and tell you all the negative side effects of masks, how the CDC, the Department of Health can't prove any studies, any evidence that masks are safe or effective. I know because I've called and they can't give me any information. I know you guys want mask optional, but there's a lot more things. With school starting, kids need a normal year. They need to be in the cafeteria with their friends, tables like normal, their specials need to be back to normal. Kids shouldn't be prisoners in their own classrooms for hours. Right now, the so-called solution to fix one problem is causing a bigger problem and a way more dangerous problem for our children. This is the third school year that these kids have to deal with this. And the long-lasting effects of our actions are so much worse. They don't deserve this, and I will do everything in my power to make sure this child abuse stops. We all know the end game. Look at New Jersey. They just mandated the shot for kids 12 and over. If you think the mask topic is heated, wait until they come after our kids with that shot. As our elected school board, we need you to stand up and be the first to say, no, we're not doing this. It's hurting our kids. You know it's wrong. Who cares if your name ends up in the paper? We don't care anymore. There's no time to sit here and wonder what other people think. The time is now to stand up and stop complying. There's so many people want this to end. So please, as representative to us, stand up to this dictatorship and let them know that East Islip will not comply. Look at Florida. They said that they didn't want, the governor said you can't mandate this. And schools went against the governor and mandated it anyway. Why can't we go against the governor and demand that we want our kids without masks? We can't. See, we just need to stop complying because it's never going to end.
Thank you.
Hello again.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time. And the fact that I'm here tonight, I guess maybe indicates how strongly I feel about this. And I'm really here to encourage the board to continue the stand that they took originally. I'm really very happy that we agree on something. It may be the first time in all these years that that's true. And the thought that it may not really happen as it should is really bothering me very much. I'm hoping that you can find a way around, about, above, below to make it optional, because this is what everybody needs to have happen. The people who want to wear masks, fine. But the thing that made the difference, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of people probably don't agree with me, is the vaccines that we all got. It's the vaccines that made the difference, not the masks. That's what I absolutely do believe, and it's the vaccines that will eventually be credited after all this nonsense and baloney and statements and false stuff that's out there is over with. I'm here from TaxPac and also from Long Islanders for Educational Reform. And I have to tell you that everybody that I've been in contact with or spoken to or gotten an opinion from is in agreement with me. But I don't know. I just hope that you have the courage to maybe even take a stand and stand up and be the one that makes the difference. And you'll probably see other school districts fall in behind you because they're just waiting for somebody to have some common sense and do the right thing for the kids, right? We have a foundation for the kids. Well, masks optional is really for the kids. And if anybody, I mean, all right, I can't help it. If there's a teacher that won't get vaccinated or can't, that's the person in the school that should be wearing the mask, not the kids. But that's you. Okay, I've been wanting to go home for the last 2 hours. I wish you would start doing these things where they're in the front instead of at the tail end of something, because a 7 o'clock meeting I shouldn't be here at 10 o'clock. And one more little thing, when you film these things, you should film them from back there more. When it's shown, you never see a person. Move back so you see who's the audience. You never see the audience. All you do is hear the voice. And that would be helpful. I think it would give people a different impression. Maybe bring more people here to the actual meetings. Thank you. Good night.
Ms. Vecchio, thank you. I guess she was the one person that was watching the board meeting. Next.
Our last speaker, Frank Tima.
Yeah, sure, but please, by all means.
All right. Good evening. My name is Frank Dima. I realize that for the past 18 months, the district and this Board of Education has had to deal with a tremendous amount of upheaval due to the pandemic. And I, for one, commend your efforts and stewardship despite your stance on the mask situation. But that's a whole other issue. But as we now enter our third year under the cloud of COVID, I came to the conclusion that life must go on, and an issue that I care greatly about, which is beyond that of COVID, must be addressed by this community's Board of Education. Back on October 22nd, 2020, I stood before this board and read some prepared remarks regarding my position on the Indian head mounted on our high school's facade. Since that time, two professional sports teams, the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians, have retired both their names and corresponding logos in recognition of the changed circumstances, demographics, and accepted norms of our society. I believe to the depth of my soul that Indian is a scar on our community and this school system. And it is all the more amplified by the fact that our teams play under the name Redmen. A school system should be promoting tolerance and acceptance. Instead, we are propagating stereotypes through misplaced nostalgia. A quick Google search will show that this is not a new issue. It goes back at least 2 decades. My position is very simple. I do not want to see the name changed. Our teams wear red. I think most folks can make that connection. But it's time for the Indian to go. If you want to keep the Indian, then change the name of the team, which is not something I want to do. We can't have it both ways, and I will give a prediction. If this board refuses to take the meaningful action on this topic, at some point, it will not only be the Indian head coming down, but it will also be pressure into changing our name. The Indian head combined with the term Redmen is a nostalgic throwback to a past era that has long passed us by, and it is now time to move forward without the Indian. Ask yourselves a simple question. If this school district came into existence today, can you honestly say that its high school would have an Indian head along with the name Home of the Redmen gracing its facade? I doubt very much that answer would be, oh, we sure would, because I doubt very much it would. There is a lot more I can say on this topic, and I will be at board meetings throughout the year expressing my views, and I hope I can find it, and I hope you find it the right thing to do. And if you disagree with me on this topic, well, I look forward to changing your mind. Thank you.
Sir, thank you. That's all you got, Steph?
Yes.
Oh, missed the days of Elaine Daddario talking about BOCES spots. Doesn't happen anymore. There were a few, like I said in the beginning, there were a few emailed questions, just a couple. One was already addressed, but Ms. Jennifer Godoldig also asked about, will there be a virtual option this year? Mr. Dolan?
Well, I didn't hear, what was the question?
You're doing the Phil Montori? Will there be a virtual option this year?
And this is pretty, it's universal around, well, across most of the county. We're in-person learning, you know, we're back in the brick and mortar school. You know, there is no virtual option, and that's something that's universal across Islip now, and we're moving forward.
Okay.
What are we going to do with kids who get quarantined?
We can go to the traditional home instruction, but they also don't fall, they won't fall under the number of days needed for home instruction, so work will be posted, and, you know, they'll be treated as if they're out sick.
Okay, she then follows up with some questions about staff testing. When will the mask be worn? Will shields be reinstalled? But these are all things that will depend on the directive that comes down.
Yeah, but I will say, I mean, I'll go out on a limb here, but there's nobody's talking about putting shields back on.
Okay. Will you be upgrading the HVAC systems and air purifiers in the classrooms?
Yeah, we did that last year. We changed the filters. You know, I'll have the answer. I don't remember the name of the filters. Steve, do you remember the name? I think it's the MERV. We'll get that from Anthony Gagliano for the next meeting, but that was done last year. We were doing all the bond work. Remember, we were closed down, and we had, the architects were on site, so that was taken care of.
All right, I'll try to remember to bring that up for old business next meeting. Ms. Lori Gould asked about masked parents being or attending sixth grade orientation.
Parents who do participate with the sixth grade orientation will be required to wear masks while in the building.
But allowed in the building?
Correct.
Okay. And lastly, Wendy Labella asked about if a kid is mandated to quarantine by the health department, will they be allowed to attend school virtually? Which I think.
We aren't going to have a virtual option. Right now, there's no virtual option.
Okay. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming down tonight, and specifically for being very respectful during the comment section. The way the meeting started wasn't perfect, and it's very difficult to handle it when it gets out of order. So I want to thank everybody for being respectful and civil to those even who don't agree with your position. Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you,
Well done,
Bob.
thank you. Go ahead. I know we just upgraded the electrical systems in the past. I mean, the electrical system was from back in the 60s and could certainly not handle every classroom having air conditioning. I know a lot of classrooms do, but every year we add more air conditioners. I don't know if it's feasible economically to add them all at one time for those 2 weeks in September and 2 weeks in June that we get the most questions about. But we continue every year to work on that and make it better. No, we understand, yeah, it comes up every year. We try to do as best we can, but now with the better electrical systems in, hopefully we can do a better job and get more of those air conditioners up and in the classrooms. Okay, the next Board of Education regular business meeting will be held, this says Thursday, September 23rd at 8 p.m. However, due to some scheduling conflicts, we're just going to have it the day before. All right, so we'll change that on the website to make sure everybody knows, but if anybody sees
Isn't it
them-
Wednesday, this September 23rd? I think the date's right. Or
Oh, is the date wrong on the sheet?
the day of the week is wrong, right? It's the Wednesday,
Wednesday the
22nd.
22nd, right.
New date. I got confused.
So Wednesday, the 22nd at 8 p.m. Will be the next Board of Education meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Everybody have a good night. Thank you.